God is gay. God is a lesbian.
You, sir, are going to hell. Really quick, before I go any further, political correctness is also going to be included. We'll be talking about political correctness a lot because political correctness obviously kind of like led to this right here. Gang, I want you to consider this video to be basically two things. Well, really three. I'm sorry, I just kind of had just another random thought just pop up in my brain. Number one, think of this as a bit of a follow-up to my video that I released on Thursday about Matt Walsh versus the mob that criticized him over being too mean to Dylan Mulvaney. Think about me discussing the current state of the actual church, the current state of the Western world, and also something else too. Think about this as a video of also trying to teach you guys on how it is that we should go about winning the culture war. Now, guys, before we talk about any ministers who were like, I hate to say this, of the woke variety, of the woke type, which obviously these ministers are in the city, before we talk about that, I want to tell you guys a very, very quick story before we get to my follow-up, because this right is definitely pertinent, and I promise you it won't take but a second. There was a guy on my Twitter that I followed. He claimed to have been a reformed Democrat. He had voted Democrat in 2004, 8, 12, 16, 18, and then magically all of a sudden in 2020, he voted Republican. And he really had kind of a cringe page. It was kind of a cringe-worthy. Like I said, every one of his posts were just completely cringe. And I think he might have missed the point about certain things that were going on. Now, maybe it's just the fact that he was waking up to the world around him, and maybe he was realizing that, hey, look, maybe I should have bbeen voting conservative. Maybe I should have been choosing the conservative candidate each time rather than the liberal. Now, this guy also, I found out in his bio, I'm not going to share the Twitter page because the guy ended up blocking me, and I'll explain why here in a second. The thing is this right here. Me and him were kind of going back and forth, and I had told him, I said, look, dude, I think we're at a point in time where we can't be nice to anybody anymore. We have to actually start being stern and actually firm when dealing with people. This right here was obviously something in which his response would be the typical milquetoast Republican response. He said, we win this by being based in the Constitution. And while I do believe we should be based in our Constitution, I also think we need to be based in our morals. And I also think you need to understand that the other side of the aisle, they're not exactly based in either. And they're kind of adopting some, let's just say, non-morals, as you guys are about to see here again in a second. Because I'm going to be playing for you guys the full clip of what the actual minister said, because it's actually much, much worse when you actually dissect it. I told this guy this. He got upset. He blocked me. Obviously, you have the Trump-DeSantis wars or the dissent wars on Twitter. And by the way, those of you who, by the way, are very, very much on the side of Ron, I'm not here to judge you or anything like that. Like I said, once the nomination process is over with, we can have that discussion. This is what this video is not about. Matt Walsh, by the way, is one of those guys who prefers Ron, whereas I'm a guy who prefers the Don. We can have that conversation after the nomination process, whatever. I'm pretty sure most people will eventually fall in line. Most people will eventually fall in line behind one particular candidate. However, the thing is this right here. This country badly needs reforms, not just economic. It needs military reform. You guys are seeing what the hell they're doing to our military. The social justice warring it. And if the military is gone, we really and truly are, in fact, gone. However, there is two more institutions. One of those, it appears to be that we are winning the war against, which, by the way, is the war that Matt Walsh has been fighting. The war, of course, for our students, the schools, our smaller children, not the college students. Trust me, college students, take it as a guy who's been to college before, colleges are, in fact, liberal, and they are liberal indoctrination places. But if you've ever actually been to a university, you will actually find out that you find a lot more moderates and a lot more conservative thinkers than you might would think. It's normally the liberal thinkers that go on to have much, much larger platforms because they stay ideological. You're probably thinking to yourself that I myself was kind of like that being on the right. No. I began to get more and more ideological when I realized that the way of the world was beginning to affect my life and those around me. I was probably around 26, 27 years old when my brain began to open up. And of course, I saw a lot of things in the classroom when I was going to school to be a paralegal. And I could kind of say that I saw a lot of what we're dealing with today coming even from there. That's another project for another day. But the other front that we need to be focusing on is obviously the church. Now, guys, you're going to see portions of the response that Walsh gave to Tim Pool and to Jeremy at the quartering and these guys. You're going to see the responses. However, I'm going to be piggybacking on things that, quite frankly, these guys don't seem to get, even though they claim to be somewhat on our side in the actual fight. But they obviously got upset about the way Walsh came about it. I'm also going to be answering back one particular person who criticized the take because these people who are criticizing the take, I don't think they're really much helping the fight. Now, guys, I'm going to roll you what was initially said, the initial reaction to Walsh's response to Mulvaney. I'm going to come back, tell you guys why it is that they're wrong. We're going to look at bits of that response. I'm going to piggyback off of it. And I'm going to explain to you why it is so desperately important that not only do we win back the hearts and minds of our students, which, by the way, is the most important thing because guess what? They are the next few. They are the next generation. We need to also fix our military, which, by the way, will be another video for a later date. And at the same time, how to actually win this culture war, because Matt's actually showing you how to do this. And I think that some of these personalities just may not be ready for the crap to hit the fan. Let's go ahead and roll the initial response to him.
Whether or not the language was a little too harsh towards Dylan. You guys know me. You watch my show. You know how I talk about these issues. I am on the side of this being too harsh. And I know there are many who will disagree with me. But to me, there is no need for vitriol.
I mean, do you reckon he's into her? It sort of does look like the sort of thing somebody would say that when they're slightly obsessed with somebody.
Yeah, exactly.
And look, factually, he's not wrong.
Yeah.
Is he?
No.
Factually.
Yeah. I don't look. If your job is to win hearts and minds, I don't think this is the best way of doing it.
What if it's your job to get clicks online?
Again, but do clicks lead to changing of opinion?
No. I don't think he's trying to change anyone's opinion.
What do you think he's trying to do then?
He's trying to make people on his side feel like he's done something cool and said something that they think, I think.
Do you think that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he's not trying to change Dylan Mulvaney's mind, is he?
Yeah, I completely agree. I just look at that and just go, even people on his own side were like, hold on a bit, mate.
Now, guys, the girl from PragerU, I'm going to kind of leave her alone, and we'll focus more on the guys from Trigonometry, because I've actually experienced this phenomenon online as far as like when it comes to Twitter and whatnot. And like I said, my Twitter page is mostly for crap posting, okay? The same thing on Facebook. I usually use it mostly now just for crap posting. I don't really post anything serious up there, just trying to troll and make fun of those who say very, very dumb, stupid things. But the thing that you have to understand is the reason why I'm not going after her is because I think the deal with her is that she's just very, very young. She's obviously younger than I am. PragerU obviously gave this girl a speaking gig. He obviously gave her a show. And PragerU, did I say Prager Young? I didn't mean to, but PragerU, the thing about PragerU is this right here. And oftentimes, it's funny because I do call them Prager Young from time to time anyways. It's kind of a Freudian slip because most everybody there is young. PragerU gets lambasted a lot by conservatives because it's a little bit more milquetoast. And they've also been caught in sort of situations where they haven't really given full details. Either way, though, I think that PragerU is good for just what it is, mostly infomercials. Okay, and that's not a knock on Dennis Prager, even though you could probably find a million ways to cut up what he says. You could probably find a million ways to cut up what I have to say. I'm just throwing it out that it's a little bit more milquetoast. And I could kind of see why she would actually respond saying, okay, maybe that right there was a little bit mean, like that there. The guys at Trigonometry, on the other hand, are designed to be, I guess you could say, comedians. I guess their idea is to try to find the hilarity in situations involving the left, which, by the way, is a good thing to do. And I'm not saying that conservatives like myself can't be made fun of. Hell, if South Park made a skit on me like they did about Harry and Meghan, I'd probably find it hilarious. I mean, the whole "they took our jobs" thing is actually kind of funny, even though it's not realistic, or even, let's just say that it's not really that realistic. As I said, it's not entirely accurate, but it is a good way of making fun of things, because even though I'm very, very much a staunch conservative, I've still got some of that early South Park mindset in me back in the old days. Fact of the matter is this right here. When you sit here and you say stuff like, well, and of course they even made a response video, you're saying a lot of things, quite frankly, that you yourself are not dealing with that much on the level that we're dealing with in our country. Check it out. I got a couple of guys who follow me who are, in fact, English. They oftentimes miss the mark when it comes to talking about the United States and American policy. They automatically believe that America is just this country, that because the demographic says 90% urban, they automatically think that everybody in America lives in this great big giant city. They think we all live in New York. They think we live in the bigger cities of the country, when that is not actually the case. When you actually break down the urban-rural divide, you actually find out that it's only about maybe 30% of the country, or maybe even 25% of the country's voters live in the much, much larger cities of the country, whereas only about maybe 10 to 15% live in the suburbs, in the metropolitan area as a whole, if you want to count the suburban areas. It's only about maybe 35 to 40% of the country, where the other 60% live in small towns, moderately sized small towns, and in rural areas of the country. I, for the most part, was raised in a subdivision in a rural area. I had family that lived in rural county. We lived in one county that was very rural, and the other half of the family lived in the county over, or actually the county I was staying in a small town, but they lived in a very, very rundown neighborhood. So I kind of got an idea, at least in small town life, to see exactly what it looked like. And of course, being in the military, being in the Marines, obviously I served with guys who were from bigger cities and different backgrounds. So I kind of got to see different types of personalities. Obviously men of color, obviously men who quite frankly are Hispanic. And of course, when you talk about Hispanic, you've got to think about actual dialects. Of course, I'm talking about whether the person is Mexican, Puerto Rican, Cuban, South American, Colombian, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All that stuff right there. Obviously, you being around different cultures, you're going to need to know this. The thing that upsets me a lot of times when it comes to Brits is that Brits oftentimes have this way of, let's just say that I think that sometimes they're, and I do love the Brits. I do love you Brits, just not Harry and Meghan. The thing about the Brits sometimes is that sometimes I think that they're not understanding exactly what we in America are going through. It's oftentimes I want to look at them and those, say, from like Canada, who claim to be on the right, who then criticize our conservative movement and say to them, look, there's a reason why we didn't like the idea of adding what looks like Marxism to our workforce, like Lauren Southern did when she got into it with Matt Walsh. There's reasons why we don't want this type of stuff brought in. There's a reason why we don't want European politics or the politics of the European right to infect our Republican Party or our conservative movement. It is because their politics ultimately ends up transitioning into, well, this right here.
God is gay. God is a lesbian. God is trans. God is gender non-binary. God is straight. God is cisgender. God is black. God is white. God is Middle Eastern. God is Asian. God is differently abled mentally and physically. God is able-bodied. God is you, and you are God, because you are a reflection of God's divine.
I told you guys that I was going to play this clip again, and this clip right here will also come up again. I played you guys roughly the full 30 seconds to show you exactly how far we have gone, how far we have fallen back. You see, right now, conservatives feel like they don't have anything left to conserve, okay? That's kind of the problem here. Now, at first, when you look at the charts, the political charts, which, by the way, I'm pulling up here, you would think maybe it wasn't the worst thing in the world for conservatives or the right to actually come more to the center. The truth is this right here. Most of the things that the left goes on about, most of the stuff that they claim that they want, stuff like gay rights and, racial equality, a lot of this is stuff that, quite frankly, they already have in this country. They just continue to ramp it up to the point to where they want to such a hilariously absurd rate. It's absolutely insane. At some point in time, you got to put your friggin' foot down. And I think the reason why we're seeing stuff like what you just saw right there is because we did not put our foot down. You're probably thinking to yourself, okay, this sounds more like a Christian issue. No, it's a Western issue as a whole. You see, we've begun to devolve ourselves into a state where we're not even protecting our own values. If we're not protecting our own values, after a while, certain personalities may seep in and take advantage of the weakness, and that right there may prey upon our kids. As I mentioned in this video that I did a few months ago about the agenda, I said that the real reason why they were going after our kids is that they were trying to indoctrinate and they were trying to normalize all the degenerate behavior so that way they could produce potentially more Democratic Party votes. That right there is the reason why they are doing it. So I think someone like, say, Matt Walsh obviously caught on to this, even though I still give him crap about voting for Evan McMullin in 2016, even though I still give him crap about his personal choice for presidential candidate 2020. Like I said, this is mostly small stuff that, quite frankly, we can laugh about and we can work out at a later date. Okay, that's not that big of a deal. But he's 100% right in this sense. We got to get tough. We've got to get, we got to be much, much more real. You see, the problem that these guys had, like the quartering and Tim Pulliam had, was the fact that They don't seem to understand that Matt is coming at this from a father's perspective. Now, guys, I'm going to roll the very first half of his response. I'm going to come back, then we'll roll the second half of his response, and then I'm going to close things out. Let's go ahead.
Well, see, this is where we differ. Because in the culture war, I don't think it's possible to go too far by speaking truth. The truth is the truth. It is what it is. It's the reality. Are we going to defend it, or are we going to conceal it? Are we going to embrace it, or are we going to hide from it? You can't have it both ways. When it comes to gender ideology, the truth is ugly. It is brutal and harsh and disgusting. I wish it wasn't that way, but it is. I didn't make it that way. I didn't create the ugliness. I'm merely pointing to it and saying, look at this. Look at it for what it is. But you would rather that I soften the blow a little bit, that I dress the truth up to make it prettier, more palatable. You want me to lie to protect the feelings of our enemies. And make no mistake, Dylan Mulvaney is our enemy. He is an open, visible, active, and passionate advocate for the abuse of children, the war on fundamental truth, and the destruction of human society as we know it. You wish to defeat this man in a manner that will not make him feel bad about himself, but I'm here to tell you that you are delusional. I'm not going to protect your feelings any more than I'll protect his. You are deluding yourself. We got into this position in our culture precisely by valuing politeness over truth. We got here by doing exactly as you would have me continue doing. And what you blame me for not. We got here by refusing to speak the plain truth and by allowing the anti-truth brigade to emotionally blackmail us into silence. They use their own mental fragility as a cudgel to beat us into submission. That's the threat, right? And we let them get away with it. Or you do anyway. I won't. Second, you say that I'm not going to convince the other side with this kind of rhetoric. But here's what you have to understand. This is very important. Convincing the other side is not my primary objective. This is the core difference between you and me. I'm not looking to reach an understanding with these people. I'm not interested in compromise and dialogue. For those who castrate children and attack the very concept of truth and erode the foundations of human civilization, my goal is to defeat and humiliate and demoralize them. Okay, I want to destroy everything they stand for. The other side is not interested in compromise. They want nothing less than your unconditional surrender. We have to meet them with that same energy, or we will lose or continue losing. And by the way, this is also a good strategy because it rallies people to our side. It emboldens the troops. It lets people know that it's okay to speak up and to speak truthfully. You know, it's often said that that you shouldn't preach to the choir. That's basically what they were saying at the end of that clip there. Just pandering. He's pandering to his own audience.
A couple of things there. Number one, the far left, especially those who are already of this, let's just say those who are pushing the this agenda, they're already gone. Okay, there's not a whole lot you can say to even convince them, even though I do think there's going to be a partial swing back or a partial, I would say there's going to be a partial swing back to one side, at least for electoral purposes, and then there's going to be a partial staying home, which means disengagement, and a partial that just says, look, you know what, screw it, I'm not any better off. These people didn't give me what I want, being the people in charge. You see what happens now when diversity hires are in charge. You see what this woke agenda has done. And most of these people, to my amazement, have not snapped out of the problem. So you got to ask yourself a question. When did we screw up? Where did we go wrong? Now, guys, look, I come from the world of sports, okay? I did my time in the Marines. I played sports most of my entire life, baseball, a little bit of football, basically been a fan, watching, of course, in my later years, worked a lot of jobs that, quite frankly, were just retail jobs. I've done a little bit of construction, not much. I only like one main temporary job as a fire watch, but obviously I've been in much more manual labor related fields. Okay, I've been to college 3 times in my life. The first time I failed out, actually 4 times. I failed out the first time, went back, got a degree in paralegal, went back, went to law enforcement academy, went back, got recreational therapy, got very big into that right there, then transferred out to sports studies and learned some psychology. And I've always had a mind for politics to a certain degree, and a mind just about for everything else. And I think that there's one thing you can see throughout all of history is that countries and nations and cultures begin to completely devolve the minute that people begin to adopt political correctness. Political correctness, this is probably how I should have even started this video, to tell you the truth. Political correctness is rampant in America at this moment in time. It is absolutely insane, okay? This is why we are where we are at, okay? We are a very, very weird culture. We're a very funny culture. We're even, you could probably write a script about America and probably bust out laughing at the amount of hilarity that's gone on in this nation. Of course, some people will scream and holler and say that America is this very, very bad place, very, very god-awful place to be, just very, very sick and disgusting place where racism is crazy and they hate gays. And, of course, you would be, for the most part, wrong, because a lot of these people can't get over the crap that happened in the past. They don't want to go forward. Fact of the matter is that these people should have been sat down a long time ago, and people should have told them flat out, you are insane. You are a nut. You need to go get help. That don't mean you got to go to a psychiatrist. A lot of these people, by the way, got crazy by just simply being lazy. They didn't really do anything. They sat in front of the TV all day. They played video games all day inside their mother's bedroom or inside their own bedroom. They had lazy-ass parents that did not take tough time with them. And as a result of this is what we've got going on right now. We've got parents trying to transition their kids at 4 years old saying, look, I now regret doing this. Okay, first and foremost, you need to let a child maybe try to grow out of that a little bit. I mean, dude, when I was in college, one of the things that we did see, especially when it comes to sociology, and I'm not a sociology major or anything like that there, and I understand that some people are going to say that doesn't really mean a whole lot, and I do agree. But some of the documentaries and crap they would put in front of our face, you're seeing people acting like dogs and stuff when they're like in their 30s. You're seeing people out here, what was it, the kids who were trans at like 5 or 6 years old. That's just a little boy. Okay, stop encouraging it. Stop encouraging it. Okay, I understand you can't push a child, but so far. But after a while, studies have proven that roughly 80% of these kids do eventually snap out of it. Stop mutilating the kids. Stop doing this to them. Okay, stop putting them through this. You are destroying their lives before it even gets started, and you are causing massive amounts of mental and emotional abuse. Like I said before, I got to kind of bring this up all the time. The trans and LGBTQ SUA, can't say the actual word, side rating, I had to kind of splice things up there. I talk about this all the time. Why do you think this right here is the case? Because you are doing this type of crap to them and you're pushing their ideology out there to be much, much more open and free. As a result of this, society eventually begins to ostracize them. You see, the more you try to force this type of stuff on people, the more people will just simply reject. They will not accept it. This is not the Soviet Union. This is not the days of Lenin and Stalin. This is not the days of Adolf Hitler. There are so many measures out there that, quite frankly, counteract all the crap coming in. You see, you can put something on television and some people will believe it, but then you got other people who kind of sort of know that the game is rigged. We kind of know it's a bunch of BS. We all know it's a great big giant work, which, by the way, is what we would say in wrestling. It's nothing more than a great big giant work. If you told people the truth from the very, very start, and if you actually be real with them, this right here would not be a problem. Let's go ahead and roll the other half.
This is a message that's meant for his own audience. Well, God forbid. God forbid I speak to my own audience on my podcast. No, preaching to the choir is a good thing. We need to do more of it. Because if the choir is demoralized and scared and cowering in silence, then you damn well better preach to them. What kind of congregation can you hope to have when even the choir is too afraid to sing? In our choir, those who agree with us, the many millions of them, have been cowed into submission. They are nervous. They are timid, like you. And then you come along and say that we should ignore them and instead tailor our message for a group that hates us and will hate us no matter what we say or do? This is not just morally wrong. It's also terrible strategy. Okay? It is a dumb strategy. In fact, it's exactly what the churches have done for decades. And it's why most of them are dying. They water down their preaching to appeal to the crowd, a crowd that isn't interested in the message, no matter how softly it's peddled. And while at best, because they did that, they bore to death and at worst actively alienate the very people who are actually sitting in the pews. So that's what the churches do. The people sitting in the pews who come to hear it, and then they give their preaching, which is designed to appeal to people who are outside the building and not even sitting there. But the people that are outside the building, they don't come in to hear any more of it. Instead, the people that were actually sitting there get up and leave. Conservatism has made the same mistake. And at what point do we learn the lessons that our own recent history seeks to teach us? Now, you say that we can't win hearts and minds by being nice. Because, by the way, I'm not saying that we're only preaching to the choir. That's not it. We also do want to convince people. But guess what? You don't convince people by being nice. You don't. At least not on a cultural level.
Gang, when they say stuff like, well, you're just simply preaching to the choir, what else is our choir? Let me ask you a serious question. What else is our choir? Like seriously, what is outside the choir? I mean, last I checked, I mean, America right now is pretty well divided, but America itself is really just one great big giant choir. It's divided within the choir. So obviously you got to preach to it. So I don't see anything wrong. I have no idea why these people were even upset. And like I said before, and I don't even know if I brought this up, but in the previous video, I talked about Tim Pool's response being more like a moderator. But Tim said a lot of things that, quite frankly, I actually agreed with. And this right here, of course, is basically saying this after essentially saying that, yeah, the other day I thought Tim was wrong about the whole snapping on his subscribers and stuff, but yet he's completely right here. Some people will think I'm flip-flopping. That's not the case. I'm calling it what it is. I call a spade a spade. I say, well, you're right, well, you're right. When you're wrong, you're wrong. That's just how I am. That's how I operate. I also said I felt that Jeremy was right in the whole Tim Pool ordeal, and I said that Jeremy was a hell of a lot more wrong in this type of ordeal here, and that he just stay in his own lane. Fact of the matter is that preaching to your choir right now is really how you get the choir going. That's how you get your base going. If you start milquetoasting, if you start watering down your actual message and not telling people the truth, this right here is what you are going to get. Need I remind you one more time?
God is gay. God is a lesbian. God is trans. God is gender non-binary. God is straight. God is cisgender. God is black. God is white. God is Middle Eastern. God is Asian. God is differently abled mentally and physically. God is able-bodied. God is you, and you are God, because you are a reflection of God's divine.
You have to tell the truth. You have to be honest with people, and it doesn't matter how you're doing. As I mentioned before, Matt Walsh was coming at this from a father's perspective. I mean, the guy's got 6 kids. He's got like 2 daughters. He's got like 4 sons or 3 sons, something like that. I know he had a child not too long ago. This guy's coming at this from a perspective of, I see what my kids are bringing in. Granted, I understand that in the state of Tennessee, where he lives at, they're not exactly allowing that anymore, thank God. But dude, you've got people who live in states in the South, states in the Midwest, states out west, and you've got parents who do not like this. If I recall correctly, the main case that got this entire ordeal started was in Northern Virginia. And then we had a case here in North Carolina where the governor, Mark Robinson, had to come out, and he had to call it out as well, because they were getting books like Gender Queer. They were being filtered out into the library and given to the students. Have you guys actually seen inside that book? Don't worry, I'll leave a link in the description box. Kids don't need to be learning this stuff. They just don't need to be learning this stuff. I mean, hell, I still give DeSantis crap for not going far enough on that bill that he signed, because it's only covered from 3rd grade down. Dude, it needed to be covering all the way through the 8th grade. Facts are this right here. Matt Walsh was 100% correct, but as you guys can see, political correctness, what has it done? It has given people a free pass, and what has it allowed them to do? Well, let's take a look at it really quick. In a lot of states in this country, you can identify as a woman, even though you are a man, and you can walk into a woman's bathroom. What does that open up for? It opens up for possible sexual assault. It opens up for a lot of weird stuff. It opens up for some very, very, very bad things, okay? Also, something else to go on top of that. What else have we got going on here? Oh, like I just said, you've got these books being filtered out to children. They're being taught this ideology at a very, very young age. Also, something else, too, you saw this. The one place that conservatives, the one place that everybody is supposed to feel safe at, has been completely invaded. How long do you think it's going to take for some of these woke churches to eventually start kicking out members of the congregation that object, members of the congregation that really and truly are Bible-believing Christians who, by the way, when they die, will go to heaven? Meanwhile, the ministers are leading the other part of the congregation straight to hell. How long do you think that right there is going to take? You see, I'm starting to believe that the best place you could go, especially if you're a Christian at this moment in time, because eventually it's going to happen, and I'll explain it in the video, is probably back to the good old-fashioned country church, because the country church is probably going to be the only one that does not go out of its way to inject political correctness into just about everything. Which is exactly what's going on here. This right here is all the result of political correctness and people not calling it out. People like Tim Pool don't have kids. And like I said, I've got my issues with him, but for the most part, I do think he had a bit of at least a turnaround in admitting that Matt was right. Jeremy, I don't know what's going on there. Maybe it's just a different line of thinking. I mean, Sydney Watson, we found out recently, was an atheist. I'm not here to knock on her about that right there, but of course, she's got a lawsuit out there where she's trying to sue the Blaze over Elijah Schaefer's behavior, which everybody knows Elijah Schaefer's behavior is bad, but the language in the lawsuit doesn't exactly look. It looks kind of politically correct, which, by the way, that is what social justice warriorism is just massive political correctness. We didn't put a foot down on it. It's time to actually start being real with people, so that way people are actually emboldened to go out there and put a stop to this. And that right there, my friends, is how you win the culture war. Now, guys, I have one more thing to cover. And it was the thing that was actually covered originally, or supposed to be covered originally, in the video that was supposed to come out today. This particular video was supposed to come out at Friday at 1 p.m. It was about 12:30. And I realized that there was something bigger than what I had posted, something that was already scheduled to be posted. It was something obviously a lot bigger that needed to be spoken about. And I'm going to speak about it here. In your Bible, in the books of Jude, and I would say it's all three passages of John, John 1, John 2, John 3, they're very, very small books right before you get the book of Revelations. I don't bring Bible prophecy up on this channel much. I don't even bring my religion up mostly on this channel, because I view my religion more as a way of life. I know I'm a bad Christian. I know I'm a sinner. I mean, I have to hit my knees and have to pray to God every night before I go to bed. And I have to hit my knees every morning when I get up to pray to God, to thank Him for the life that I've given, because the best I can do at this moment in time is reverence Him and just try to live a good life, which, by the way, I often fail at. Most of us do. I mean, come on, man. Nobody's perfect. We're all human. We all try. Okay, that's just the way things are, which, by the way, is really screwed up, too, because there's something else, too, that I didn't mention, but I'm going to say it right now. The left likes to hold the right to an extremely ridiculous standard. They love to hold Christians to an extremely ridiculous standard. You know what that is? That's called the devil. Only the devil would persecute you over something that you did when you were like 7 or 8 years old. It goes back to that whole Jerry Jones photo. We're really, truly living I believe we really, truly are living in the end times. We're going to persecute him for standing in a room full of guys who were blocking all blacks when he was 14 years old. He obviously didn't know what the hell was going on. I mean, you want to judge him for anything else, judge him for everything he does on a day-to-day operation, rather than what he did when he was 14 years old back in 1957. Obviously, sins that, quite frankly, he has been forgiven for. Do you want to be on trial for something you did when you were 14 years old? That right there is a satanic spirit. As I may have already said, or if I did not already say before, you obviously need God to defeat Satan. This right was a point that I caught when Matt Walsh went on Jason Whitlock, and Jason Whitlock said, look, man, why didn't you include the biblical definition of a man and woman? And Matt's excuse, while at first sounded okay, the next day I was kind of like, no, that was kind of pretty pathetic. And I even made a video on it, which, by the way, I'll leave in the description box for you guys. Fact of the matter is this right here. Maybe Matt is waking up to the fact that you do, in fact, need God to defeat this devil. And by the way, this devil that we're dealing with is wokeness. I initially thought it was going to be a fad. Now I'm starting to see that it's probably not going to go away, especially now that it's invaded the corporate world. The corporate overlords are not smart enough to realize what the hell is going on. But I want to say this really quick, and I touched on it very, very briefly, and here's where I'm going to end the video at. Book of Jude. You've also got the book of James. You've also got 1, 2, and 3. And by the way, the entire Bible is good. Go ahead and read it all. It's hard to read through, but especially your New Testament. They speak of false teachings in the church. False teachings in the church. They speak of false teachings in the end time. They talk about a lot of pseudo-Christ, which, by the way, in reality, your antichrist is really, really pseudo. It means replacement. I advise you guys to go watch your Chuck Missler. The thing is this right here. We have false teachers, and they have invaded the church. They have invaded the church, by the way, in mostly the cities, the bigger cities. Ezekiel 38:39 speaks of the United States. By the way, many people can't find the United States in Bible prophecy, but it's right there, Ezekiel 38:39, Gog and Magog invasion. It's listed under the merchant of Tarshish. Many people don't know what Tarshish is. They automatically assume that Tarshish is England because it was a land that made tin. In reality, what it really says is it's the lands beyond Gibraltar, which did make tin, which in fact is probably an acronym for possibly two separate nations, Spain and England. I personally go with England, but still, you should leave it as a possibility. because, I mean, it was Spain who did find it was a man who traveled from Spain, an Italian man named Christopher Columbus, who did hit the West Indies. Eventually, it was the British who eventually settled it. Of course, that was South America, where was ultimately everything. I'm going too far. Fact of the matter is this right here. There's a nice little passage that talks about it. It says that those living carelessly in the isles will feel the wrath. What's an isle? Well, according to the text, Strong's Dictionary, an isle is actually a city on the water. What is most of America's cities at? Where are they mostly at? On the water. New York, Boston, all the way into the Midwest. I want you guys just to sit there and just kind of think about it. Oh, and by the way, the word batash, which is I think it's the Greek word that's used to describe this, means false confidence. Regardless whoever the president is, those who live in these areas obviously live in a level of false confidence and false reality. It's just what it is. Rampant smugness. Doesn't matter. Just think on that. Guys, John Claymore here. If you like the content, hit the like button, subscribe, share the video. If it upsets you or whatnot, I apologize. If somebody got offended, well, if you got offended, I really truly don't care. But if it went a little bit longer than you thought it was going to go, I apologize for that. It wasn't really meant to do that. But still, at the same time, though, guys, make sure you guys hit that like button, subscribe, share the video, sign off in the comment section. I want to get you guys' thoughts on it. Tell me where I'm wrong. And to you wokes out there, piss off.